We are on. So first of all, I managed essentially to get everybody in who came to the first class. So I'm particularly proud of how we subverted the system in a way, right? So if we, well, I'm on tape, I guess. So if you see the fire marshal barging in, we can point at the empty seats and say we are okay due to the impact of the Zoom recording. So yeah. But I hope this will be helpful. I'm sure you are happy since you're in, right? I planned to give out homework 1 either today. No, actually today is impossible. Tomorrow. Today I just don't have time to prepare it. But I plan to give it out tomorrow, being due next Friday. So you have 1 week to do it, and it's actually an easy homework. I think the main challenge for you will be not so much how to do the homework, but how to set up your computer so that you can develop. There are review sessions. One was yesterday, and one is gonna be tomorrow, where you can get help. There are also office hours. I'm unfortunately, very much of a Linux and Mac person, so I don't know how to help with every kind of Windows problem. The advice is to install Anaconda Python. I saw at office hours some people asking questions about which kind of shell is the best shell in order to type comments. So if you can actually participate in Piazza and exchange advice, I will read that advice there as well. And so, bring up my Windows knowledge at the moment, okay? When I used to have a Windows machine, it was many years ago, and I used to use Cygwin, which I loved as a shell, but is also very heavyweight in installation. So by the way, a note that is really off topic, but may be of interest to you. For a long time, I had the most marvelous experience developing for computer science stuff, not in Mac or Windows, but running a virtual machine on my laptop. It was beneficial in 2 ways. First of all, a lot of these development tools for websites are really aimed at Linux. And when you develop, when you deploy your solution on the cloud or on a server, it's going to be a Linux server mostly. So getting experience on how to manage a Linux machine is actually super helpful. And the other big thing in favor of using a Linux VM is not required for this class. But it's something that you may want to try to do in your time, using, for example, something like VirtualBox and installing Ubuntu. No, I highly recommend it for your personal growth. The other super helpful thing is this, that in VMs, at least from VMware, I haven't used VirtualBox because I used to buy VMware Fusion a long time ago and use that, right? But at least in VMware Fusion, and I'm sure also in VirtualBox, you can maybe tell me if you have used it, you can version the virtual machine. This means the following incredible thing for my blood pressure. That when I try to do something crazy like, install this version of tool XYZ that may blow up your Linux distribution, but you need to do it for a project, you can take a snapshot of the virtual machine. You can play with your computer trying to install whatever you want. And if you really mess up and end up in a place where you don't know what to do, you can go back to your snapshot and try again from there, right? And this is incredibly easier than running a Linux distribution on bare hardware and having to figure out how to recover when you actually get tangled up in some kind of complex mistake. Okay, so I really had a marvelous experience for many years, and I only converted now to develop mostly natively on the Mac. I don't know why. Essentially, many years ago, I bought a Mac that was not quite powerful enough for me to run the VM for some big computational load, and I decided that I should do it. I don't know, everybody tries many things. But I just want to pass this generic advice before we start the class, It may be, actually, I think for a computer scientist, knowing how to run a Linux VM should be almost compulsory knowledge by the time you graduate. even though it may not be taught explicitly in any class. So let me instead get back to some of the material. Sorry. I'm sharing the whole screen. There. I mean, if somebody could keep an eye over the chat and let me know if there are questions, I would love it. Thank you. Okay, so I'm developing in this branch that is called, wait, maybe mute the participants. Where do I have them? Manage participants. 31 participants remote. Mute all. Bang. Okay, you can unmute yourself if you want to speak, right? But so we don't hear sort of background noises. Okay. I just now, if somebody tells me how I can make this stupid thing disappear, I would be happier. So I'm working on the bottle branch that I posted on the class, okay? And I created a new branch called the Lecture 2 2019 for this lecture. And at the end of the class, I will upload this branch to the server so that you can download it and see all the code I develop in class. This is a fairly standard thing I do, right? When I give you the code, I give it to you as a pointer to a branch. And if you want to reconstruct what I did, you can go to look at the various commits of the branch. So this is one of the reasons why you kind of need to know Git to follow the class well. I find it as an extremely pleasant way of giving you the code, okay? And I want to pick up essentially from where I left. So where I left is this. I was running the Bold server. I can connect it to localhost 8080. I'm using Safari, but you can use what you want. Sorry, this is not what we were doing, okay? I'll come to that in a moment. Okay, I think I was in index, and this thing was simply saying, welcome to CMPS, etc., etc., okay? And what I want to do is, first of all, teach you how to dig into this a little bit more. So what happens when I load this page? Okay, well, it loads. Okay, fine. But what I mean is, what is really happening? So in Safari, you have to enable these sort of development pages. In Chrome and in Firefox, in Chrome, I think you click on View, and there is a developer options, and then you can click on Open. Maybe I should do it with all the browsers so that you see how it is done. So in Safari, you do this. You say develop, and then you can, for example, show web inspector, JavaScript console. I don't know. I think it's pretty much the same, because if you open any one of them, it divides the page in two portions. The first is the page itself, and the other are instruments where I can see what is going on. I have a network tab. I have typically I have, in fact, with a bit of order. There is an elements tab. Let me see if I can magnify this. Yeah, sorry. There is an elements tab that enables me to explore the code that I have loaded and how it works. You see, this is the pictorial representation. Welcome to CMPS 183. But the document in HTML is composed of an open-close HTML tag, an open-close head tag. There is nothing in the head. And in the body, there is welcome to CMPS 183, and then the body closes, okay? And then I have some information about the styling that we will talk about in a moment. So elements enables me to explore the web page. A bit an aside, but we will see it in a moment. What is a web page? A web page is written in HTML, which is this language that has opening and closing tags, and is parsed in a tree, right? Like many languages are parsed in trees. If you parse a piece of C code, is also parsed. It also has the parse tree if you have taken compilers. You know, in which maybe there is a root tree, then there is a function declaration, and inside the function declaration there is, you know, the list of formal arguments. Then there is the a list of statements, and you know, this bunch of stuff. So here in HTML, we are seeing essentially a tree represented by these tags with the tree nesting represented by indentation. HTML is the top node. Below the top node, there are two children, a head children that does not have any content, and there is a body child that has a string welcome to CMPS 183 as content. So, you know, whenever a page is loaded, the browser parses it in something called the DOM. DOM for Document Object Model, which means the tree representing the document with its various attributes. Was that a question or? Okay, no, fine. Okay, so this is the Elements tab. The Network tab is incredibly useful. It will enable us to follow the request and the reply from the server. It's a place in which we will very often go when we mess up, because it will contain information such as, you know, did our request made it to the other side? Did we get the reply? Does the reply look as we want? And, you know, all that will be discoverable here. The debugger enables us to look at JavaScript code and set breakpoints. We don't have any JavaScript, so we won't be using the debugger for a little while, okay? And the resources, actually, I don't know, because I used to use more Chrome debugger, and it had slightly different tabs. So I don't know what is here, but, you know, we can look at it. It's probably the files that are loaded as part of loading the web page, is my guess. Timelines is probably, you know, it enables you to debug why the page is rendering at a certain speed. So the other things are slightly less important, and we get to them one by one. Initially, for the first week of class, the important tabs are Element and Network. And just to show you how this works, if I use Chrome, Chrome also has a very nice debugger. In fact, if I get frustrated with Safari, you will see sometimes me gramping and opening Chrome. Okay, I use a bit of them interchangeably, really, and so if I load a page here, to get the same view in Chrome, you can click on View, Developer, and then it doesn't really matter. You know, all these will open the same set of you know, debugging tabs, just initially a different one at the beginning. So I can say View Source. No, sorry, View Source is the only one that shows something different. Okay, a great guess. So I'm sorry, but like you click on Developer Tools, and this gives you basically the same tabs. Okay, it has been not found. Why does it not found? Oh, it's an older error again. Oh, favicon. This favicon, or favicon, whatever, favicon. Favicon, but is the symbol that you put in order to denote the type of the website, okay? And they haven't defined it, and so the browser automatically tries to fetch it from localhost, and they don't have it. So if you see an error related to favicon or whatever it is pronounced, don't worry about it. But the Elements is pretty much the same tab, right? Then there is console, which is a JavaScript console. Then there is sources, which is pretty much what is called the resources on the other end. And there is network here. Okay, so now we have our choice of debugging tools. Firefox, I don't open it, but you know, you can do that yourself. I don't know which one is my favorite at the moment. I think I'm more used to Chrome, and but I've gotten into the habit of using Safari for completely non-technical reasons. And so I don't know how we'll conduct this class. If you look at the network, actually this contains some interesting information, and we should look at it first. I told you about HTTP, the transfer protocol. So if I do a request, this tells you how long it takes to do it. It took 5 milliseconds plus some network time. Okay, so great. And if you click on the request, you can do various things. You can preview what came back, which in this case is just the string. And then you can look at the headers, which is super important. So the headers is like, you know, what you write on an envelope, right? And so there is what you write on the envelope on the way to, and what you receive on the envelope on the way from. There are the request headers and the response headers. So let's take a look at it a moment. The request contains the main part about the request, it's a GET request. A GET request is used to tell the server, give me the document at this URL. There are other type of requests, and we will look at them probably in a week. So this says, give me the document called index HTTP. Is this big enough for everybody? The screen font. Okay. If you can always complain and I magnify it. Okay. Just let me know. So it contains a cookie. Well, I might as well explain now what cookies are. I guess who doesn't know what is a cookie? I mean, I think everybody knows what cookies are in general, but maybe you don't know specifically what cookies are. I mean, perhaps because the web started when I was in grad school, but I have always this surprise at how it is to code for the web. So coding for the web is a little bit difficult because imagine that I go, for example, in front of him and we have a conversation like, "Hi, what did you do today?" "Yeah, I went to, I don't know, I surfed in the morning, then came to class." And when we talk to each other, we have context that I'm always talking to him, right? But the funny thing about a web server is that it's there, it replies to requests, but it does not have a way to say, oh, that request has the same face as the same guy to which I've been talking a moment ago, right? It cannot really recognize who is talking to it. It's very different from a lot of other contexts. If you have developed code that runs locally on your machine, the code is asking, how many kilos of spaghetti did you eat today? 5. Okay, that's too much. But the conversation is always, with the same user who is in front of the computer. You normally don't have this problem that you are building something to which requests from all over the place come all at the same time, and it doesn't know to whom it's talking. This is new of the web. The server does not recognize the faces of things coming in. So how can you converse with, how can you have a Facebook window open or a Twitter or a Google or a whatever, one of these sites with which you interact? And how can you have a conversation, as you seem to be possibly having, with one application sitting at the other end with keeping the context? The answer is in cookies, okay? So what happens is this. When you visit my website, which in this case is called localhost, but it could be called the google.com, when you visit me, the server is typically going to give you a cookie. The cookie is simply the cookie can contain other information. The cookie is an arbitrary string, actually, that is associated with the website. And when the browser visits the website again, when the browser requests any URL from that same website, the browser will automatically include the cookie alongside with the request, okay? So here, this cookie, I don't know who gave it or when to this browser, okay? But simply the browser is thinking, ooh, I'm contacting localhost. Do I have a cookie for localhost? Yes, let's attach the cookie alongside with the request. And if you go in your browser settings, you will see that you have cookies for all kinds of sites in it. And when you contact those sites, the cookie is included, whether you want it or not. Even if I were requesting just an image from those sites, the cookie is included actually, okay? And the cookie, in its basic incarnation, like this one, is a random string, okay? So why is it useful? Because, oh, by the way, I think in sometimes I really wish you had name tags for some classes so that I can start to learn your names. It would be kind of useful for me. Otherwise, I pick always on the people in the front row, but you don't have to behave in any special way. It's just useful as example tokens. So for example, she comes and to my website, and I want to remember that whatever she does on the website is associated with the same person. So I invent a big random string, and I give it to her. Now, every one of her requests will be accompanied by this long random string. Suppose she logs in and I discover that she's Beatrice, okay? Then I can create a record in a database that says this long random cookie is actually Beatrice, the email is this and this, and I can create a user record associated with the cookie. And when she visits the site, all I know is the cookie, and the first thing a web browser can do, a web server can do, is look up the cookie in a database and fish out the information about the particular user so that I know how to greet her and, how to, reply with a page that is appropriate for her and not for another user. Okay? So this is a long introduction, which maybe is a bit, we won't be using cookies for a week at least, because cookies make sense once users can start to log in. You can use cookies fine in bulk. It's only that we don't have a strong need to use them. But I think it's a good time to I want to describe essentially what is in this content. Now, before I come to your question, I just want to say cookies are a super interesting security problem because cookies are random strings. So do you know about the birthday paradox, right? How many people do you need in a room for it to be likely that two people have the same birthday? The same kind of problem is there with cookies. If you have 1 million people that visit your site in a day, what's the probability that 2 of them have the same cookie? Well, it has better be really low for 2 reasons. First of all, the problem is that if I give 2 of you the same cookie, then you are the same person. So, if I and him have the same cookie at Facebook, I can see his account, or he can see mine. Depending on whatever Facebook thinks is the cookie is attached to, right? And so that's the problem. And the problem is also that you may think, well, there is 1 billion people in the world, they don't visit all the same day. But so even if they visit the same day, the probability is this. But that's an optimistic count. The fact is that I can build very easily a bot of 100 PCs that can request pages from a website. And what does a server do? If you come to me without a cookie, I give you a cookie in the reply. Because if I give you a cookie in the reply, then you will give it back to me when you visit again. So if you want to attack a website, every time you do requests without a cookie. And then you try to see if the cookie that you're given actually works to give you access to somebody's account, right? That would be the attack. So the attack can be carried out in a distributed way at much higher speeds. So actually having a super good encryption for random number generation for very long, truly random cookies is one of the concerns of deploying highly scalable websites. And for your curiosity, for example, the Web2Py mechanism for generating cookies. So this is all things that maybe I should say at another moment, but you will discover as a teacher, my inability is to sometimes skip to the path that I thought I would take before class. Okay, so I have to apologize. But so if you look in the archives of Web2Py, there is a very interesting discussion between Massimo Di Piero, the author of Web2Py, and, oh, goodness. This professor at UC Berkeley that works on cryptography and is one of the people involved in the data science classes, whose name I know really well, except escapes my mind in this very moment. And you can find that the discussion related to the fact that even if you have a plain vanilla, normal, safe, random number generator, once you put into this generator into a virtual machine in the cloud and replicate the virtual machine many times, there is a small risk that these random number generators will be all initiated to the same seed. And so will generate the same sequence. And so there was an interesting discussion in how to actually avoid and introduce true randomness in cloud servers that are cloned at the bit level from each other, okay? And the name will come to my mind. I know the person even. I just have these forgetful for names. Okay, so anyway, so this is the cookie. The request then specifies also what can you accept back as a reply. This means that I can accept the text HTML, which means HTML. I can accept XHTML, which is some other standard, and I can even accept XML, okay? And this, I don't know what it means, frankly. Eh? Yeah. Oh, sorry, yeah, sorry.
So if you log in with like user and password, wouldn't the website already know who you are, then you won't need cookies for that, please?
No, because suppose you log into CloudGrader, say with you. Well, actually, CloudGrader is a bad example because you never truly log in CloudGrader. You only log in Google, and then Google tells me what your email is. But imagine that I build a site called example.com and you log into it. you don't include username and password in every request, only when you log in, right? So when you log in, essentially you have visited me before. Imagine your cookie is ABCD, no, a random string, ABCD. So I see a request coming, the cookie is ABCD, and now I have username and password. So what I think, if you are logging in and not creating the account, the sequence will be something like this. Oh, ABCD. Well, actually, how will it be? Sorry, it will be ABCD is the cookie. Now you have username and password. You have Joe, and the password is banana, because as I mentioned in Piazza, it's always banana, if we don't need to be secure, okay? So Joe and password banana. Then I look at it, I have a database of username and passwords, of course. So the passwords are encrypted. I don't want to get dragged into that now. Maybe let's talk about how to encrypt passwords later. But I take Joe Banana and I say, yeah, these are the right password for Joe. And then I simply create another table that will tell me, oh, the cookie is associated to Joe. But in every subsequent request you do, I see the cookie from you. I don't see username and password. I see the cookie, but then I know that you logged in and the cookie belongs to Joe. But that is information server side. We will look at login in detail later, okay? For the moment, the cookie is essentially something that enables me to distinguish who is talking to me if I'm the server. There is a host, there is a user agent. The user agent is used to tell the server which type of browser you are. It's not really the case that the server needs to take any particular action. If you're developing a particular site, you may want to, for example, sometimes you want to see whether these are mobile devices or not. I mean, it gives you some information. You normally don't need to look at it. Accept encoding, this is important. This means, yes, I'm requesting a text HTML, but you can actually use a gzip or deflate in order to compress the page. Pages normally travel compressed, and they're decompressed on your local browser, okay? So just for economy. And so essentially the browser is saying, this is a request, right? The browser is saying, hey, you can give me the page compressed if you like, I don't mind, I can re-expand it myself. Dumb browsers at the beginning of time, they were not able to decompress pages, right? And they were not having this header, okay? Now the response headers are also interesting, or even more so. Sorry, if somebody knows how to sort of make this stuff disappear. Eh? No, it would have been too nice, right? Maybe I click escape. No, I don't think there is any solution. I think the solution is something like this. No, it doesn't even want to go away. Please, somebody tell. No, okay, fine. Yeah, that will work. Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't know. Okay, let me move it around. I think it will be the curse for this class. Unfortunately, I don't think I can raise what is there. So I hope you can read it. But essentially, in the response, there is this super important part that says, I'm using the protocol HTTP 1.1, just like the request. And the response is 200, okay. This is an HTTP code that tells you whether the request was successful or not. I think you're all familiar with 404 for page not found, right? So 200 is the sign of a successful request, and okay is, the corresponding string. So the important codes are 200, 404 for not found, and then we will see many codes. I don't introduce them all at once because it's kind of boring. But the other useful code for you will be 500, which means a server error, which in this case, it means your error, okay? You made some error and the server is complaining that it encountered an error while processing the request. So in this class, for the first time, 500 errors are your problem. Then it tells you I'm returning text HTML, the content length is this, and it gives you the timestamps as well, okay? So, sorry, this is a lot of detail, but you need to at least once have seen it, I guess. Cookies are cookies, okay, so you can display it in prettier formats if you want. Sizes, timing, it tells you exactly where the time went. It was queued for 3.3 milliseconds, so then it went out. I'm not sure you need to worry about these, except if you're trying to optimize your site. And security, it tells you no, was no certificate, no HTTPS. It's a normal HTTP request, okay? So you have elements and network tab. So now, if I request, for example, index 2, this will look similar, except that when I click here and I click on the headers, I see the famous 404 not found, right? And so you need to look at these essentially to try to figure out what went on, right? You can look at the preview, and you discover that in the preview of the request, actually, the server didn't just send me an empty string back. It actually sent me this whole yada yada back that when displayed would render like this. This is courtesy of bol.py, that when it cannot find an endpoint to process your request, when it cannot find one of these declarations, so this is a get endpoint that replies to a get request for index, it generates automatically this kind of nice looking not found page for you. Okay, so sorry, I hope this is not too slow, but yeah. So when you get an error, you have to look in all these places. So basically, actually, this will be true for most of the class. If you get an error, where do you need to look? You need to look in the elements, in the network. Later on, we need to look at the JavaScript console. At this point, we don't have any JavaScript running. So there is not very much in the JavaScript console. And it also overlaps with this thingy, ag. I'm getting allergic to it already. And the last point where you need to look at is the server. You see, whenever we do a request, the server is generating some logs. But come on, there must be a way to send it to. No, it refuses really to go anywhere. Okay, so it generates this log of every request, and if we make a mistake, there will be usually an error message printed out there. In fact, actually, I think we should try it. Okay.
What'd you do? Wait.
Whoa. Okay, I'll do my victory dance, but I'm not on screen, so it would be almost wasted. Let's not call the name of that thing, right? Otherwise it may reappear and say, hey. So let's try to introduce a mistake, okay? So in index, I can say, for example, A is equal to B, and B is not defined. I think this will generate a runtime error, okay? And if I request the page index, okay, what will happen? I request a page. This gives me an internal server error. So if you go in the network tab, you will see that also the request has now in the headers, there is internal server error, okay? And if you look at the server logs here in my iTerm where I ran it, okay, I can find here the error. So there are all these places you need to keep a tab on in order to figure out what goes wrong. Okay. So that's a bit of debugging. Okay, good. Now, I want to do a little bit of HTML. Questions up to this point? Okay, so in theory, I can build any site by using bol.py. I'm using bol because it's one of the simplest possible servers, right? And it's actually pretty good. It's very fast. For simple things, it works really well. But in principle, I could build any possible application by doing this. I can use bol.py. I can write a Python method that assembles a really long string, and then I ship this string out as my response, right? In fact, at low level, that's what every web server does. But it would be a very inconvenient way of writing a web page. For example, you know, I could use h1 is a tag that enables for me to say title. I could say title, okay, and then I can say as a paragraph, I can say welcome to this, okay? So I could build a page that looks like this, okay? And it would work. I think it goes, no, I think it goes up if nobody looks at it. So I just need to move this a little bit down. Yeah, you see, so now it replies with what I want, okay? So, but as you can imagine, this would be a sort of nasty way of creating web pages. You know, it's as if I told you when you want to write a C program, I write it by concatenating many strings, each one of which contains a statement, and you know, then ship it all to the compiler. It would be kind of horrible, right, to edit it in that way. So Bodle, like basically any web server framework, gives you the ability of defining a template. A template is a file that you can ship back as the answer. So the simplest template is this. Let me modify this to use a template. Instead of doing this, okay, I can chop this string and I can put it in a file that is under views. For example, I can call it welcome template. Okay, I call it welcome.tpl, for instance. And here I can write in HTML in a sort of semi-dignified way. Except, unfortunately, my editor does not know I'm writing HTML, but that's a minor problem, okay? So I can write it in this way. This looks a little bit better. And since I am at it, I can say, I don't know, I hope you are having a nice day. And we can do more things here, okay? Now, this is a template. How do I ship it back to the user? Well, I go into server.py, and instead of returning this, I can say that this GET request now has to use a view that is called that is called welcome, right? And so here, instead of returning my response, I return an empty dictionary. You know that this is a way to create an empty dictionary in Python? If not, now you are told. This would be another equivalent way, okay? And in general, I use this syntax of saying dict, just because it's my habit, okay? So let's see whether this works. I sometimes do stuff that doesn't work, right? So, hey. Oh, okay. Wait. This is unexpected. Uh-oh. Why does this not work? I'm trying to work by differences. I'm sorry. Sometimes I did. Yeah, it's back. I know. Okay, I'll give it some space. But am I still running the thing? No, you see, this stopped. I think my error might have been smaller than I thought. Wait. So let me stop and restart the server, and then get index. But this is what I'm doing. Do you see any obvious error in what I'm doing?
Maybe go back to what you had before and then just like slowly add that.
Yeah, let me try, for example, this say hi, Luca, okay? Because that used to work. I'm sorry, sometimes it happens to me. I mean, it is a drawback of doing things on the fly. But if I say hi / Luca, this also doesn't work. Okay, so let me go back to something that works, following the advice of, so it's great, but sorry, let me choose the branch. I don't know how I managed to break it so fast. Usually it takes me a little bit no longer, okay? Git checkout branch lecture 2 2019B, okay? So let me try to see whether this now works. I have a feeling I know why it breaks. It's only too boring to check, but so this works, and this doesn't. Why doesn't it work? No, I mean, the problem I have is that I tested this code. Instead, I did the test in my office, and it worked when I was in my office. So what is going on? I'm sorry, that this is a problem. You see, there is this grid template. One moment, let me do. I have almost the impression that I have an old version of the server running in the background. Let me see if it's true.
I'm not sure why that
yes, but then it should stop. Okay. No, this is correct. I mean, I've used this. You say these. Darn. Okay, let me try. So there is greet name and say hi name. So this works. Okay, so what is the difference? That this is apparently is the right syntax and this is the wrong syntax. Okay, so okay, fine. It's me. It's my stupidity. I must have checked one, tried one form and not the other. Okay, so if you look at the bold documentation, they say that both forms are valid. Evidently, one of them is not. Okay, so now we know by trial and error the one and only syntax. So to use templates, you have to return a template in which you specify the template and the name. So now let me get back to the original example, okay, in which I wanted to have my template welcome. I can do it by doing a template that contains welcome, okay, and then an empty dictionary. This was the way to write it, and I somehow forgot it. Okay, so now even these should work. I'm sorry. Unfortunately, I do sometimes get in trouble. Okay, so if I do this, it works. Okay, and we can continue with the class. Good. Yeah, well, I'm not sure I deserve it, but you know, I mean, this, so if you tangle yourself up, you know that you are not the only one. Okay, I tangled myself up as well. So let me continue from where I was stuck. Okay, so in this template at the moment we have a template that just has no parameters. We are basically writing a web page, and I just would like to use this moment to give you some rough introduction to what can go in a web page. Okay, and then expand from here. So what are these things? I mean, I think you have seen them. They are tags. There are two kinds of tags structurally. I will write and then delete, but there is a tag that looks like this. There is an opening and a closing tag, okay? And in the middle, you can write stuff. And you can say, and also there is a single tag that works in this way, in which case it self-closes, okay? So these are the two ways in which you can have a tag in HTML. It either has an opening and closing corresponding, or it's a singleton. So it open and I mean it does not have opening and closing, but it's just itself. Okay. Now tags. Let me use the type above. For example, can have attributes, and attributes can be, for example, happiness is equal to yes. Okay. This would be a possible way in which you can attach an attribute to a tag. And tags can have many attributes. So many that, you know, people don't usually remember all what the possible attributes for every tag, and you search it up. For example, input is a tag that has particularly many attributes, and you can open the browser and say, for example, input tag attributes. In HTML5, but even without HTML5, and you land on some pages. For example, everybody tells me that these are horrible pages to look at because they're not official, but they're pretty fast to use. And they tell you all the possible attributes: accept, align, alt, autocomplete, autofocus, check. Then you go there, and then you go there for quite a while. Okay, and so these are useful resource. And yes,
I noticed at the bottom it says you're using Python 3.7 for content. Are we allowed to use 3.7?
Yeah, so this is the thing, you know, the bottom line you see here is which Python is being used. What page is this? Oh, yeah, this is my editor. So my, you know, I'm not running code from my editor. Okay. I'm just showing you the code. Actually, here, if I type some characters, I think they're these ones. No, these ones, no. I had defined a way. Help. But I had defined a way to get a terminal appear here with a shorthand key. There is a way to get to a terminal.
Oh, click on the terminal button on top.
Right, which one is it? Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, I need to create a new terminal. So now here is a terminal that I can possibly use. Okay. And you see that it's activating Conda 3.7, and I don't like that. So I can say Conda env. It tells me which environments I have. Sorry, Conda env. And it tells me all the environments I have. No, sorry, Conda env list. And, you know, on my laptop, I define a bunch of environments, and then I could go to use, for example, the ball environment. Okay. Conda, no, source activate ball, and this would be which Python? Okay, but if I say Python, This is a Python 2.7, no? So I could run it in this way if I wanted. That's the way I recommend. I don't recommend trying to waste time configuring a VS Code so that it knows which Python you're running. I mean, you can do that if you wish, but I don't do it, okay? This actually opening the terminal is a convenient way of working. And then you can either close it or you can minimize it. You know that I sort of forgot how to minimize it. Yeah, for the moment I just nuke it. Okay, so these are HTML tags. Okay, and what are some useful ones? Yes.
Why do you consider the webpage a terrible fit?
No, I was told. I actually, I'm a sort of information omnivorous person. I just read it from the first source I can get it, and then I go on with my work. But the purists tell me that that is not the official source of knowledge about where you should be learning about HTML tags. And then I don't listen to them. And so I just wanted to report you the opinion, right? That if you ask a purist, they will tell you that they're not the most authoritative source. But, I mean, if you look for simple information, you can get it from anywhere, right? And so, yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. No, I know, I don't know. I mean, you could go look at the standard or maybe, I mean, no, no, now seriously. The Mozilla developer pages are very nice. Okay, and so that is a resource that I go for more complicated things. The Mozilla developer pages are very, very nice. And so when I really want to dig more into things, I go there. Okay, so I was a bit joking. What are some of the tags? So let me just give you a quick introduction. H1s mean title. Okay. Then you have various levels. H2 is a subtitle. This means a title a little bit smaller. These things create titles. Then you can create a list by saying UL. I don't know why it is UL, okay? And then there is a list, and this is this is a list point. And you can say this is another, okay? So if you render this page now that I solved my problem, that's not where I thought I was. Oh yeah, it's here. So if I render this page, it does nothing. Okay, so why it does nothing? The reason is this, actually. It's a stupid problem, but Bottle per se does not know when you change files under its feet. Okay, this is typical of many web server frameworks. If you change Bottle wakes up and says, okay, here I am, and then it needs to fetch a file from the file system. It fetches it and it caches it. But the second time you ask, Bottle is not checking all the time that the file hasn't changed, because it would be a huge waste of time for a production web server, right? I'm here, I'm trying to answer to as many queries per second I can possibly do. And I don't want to each time read the file in case if somebody changed it, because it happens once every week. I mean, that would be completely silly, right? So if I now restart Ball, it will notice the change. So I have to go here and restart it. And when I reload, you will see the change. Hopefully, right? I'm special. Okay, fine. This time I'm right. Now, this is kind of annoying when you're developing. In fact, it's truly annoying when you're developing. And so Ball has one way to actually tell it, please watch my files, and if they change, let me know. And I think I used it in Git in some place, and I can retrieve it because I can never remember. I think it's called something like debug is equal to true, or let me see if I can find it. These are the problems. I need my mouse to be precisely there. Help. It's like there. It's like a needle in the thing, in the so let me look a moment. Actually, I think I can just look here. Look here, and I can look at server.py, and I'm sure that here at the bottom, reloader is equal to true. You see, this is a key thing to say. So when you are when you are here, you can go in server.py. Oh, but I had it reloaded is equal to true. Okay, then it must be debug is equal to true. Well, let's put them both, and it may work. Only, of course, now I need to restart it. Okay, so I restarted it. Let me come back to the previous programming. Okay, here I am. Yes.
Is the term hotfix in the debugging while we're
Sorry.
have you ever heard the term hotfix?
Yeah, but you need to you need the server to know that it has to load the new version of the files. Now I think it will notice. Web2Py will notice automatically. So in Web2Py it's kind of easier to do it. Okay, I'll talk later about how to productize. Okay, so these are some of the simplest tags. Okay, but the most important tags are two others. Imagine that you have the guy who has to write the first browser of all, right? How would you do it? Well, you would start thinking a little bit and say, oh my goodness, this sounds difficult. How can I simplify it? And then I would start thinking, well, I build a parse tree, and I have a two-dimensional window that I need to fill with content. So what do? I have a tree, and I probably have to allocate rectangles to regions of space, right? I have to say, okay, this tag here will be rendered in this rectangle. And so rectangle seems to be an important unit of thing, right? Because it's how you probably render is based on rectangles. You know, here you put something, there you put something below, and so on and so forth. The other important unit of content is not a rectangle, but a stripe of text, for lack of better word. This means, you know, like a sentence. This means, you know, you can wrap around margins, but it's even though it's broken up and so it doesn't quite look like a rectangle because it can finish at some point in a row and begin at some other, it's a sort of span of text. These seem to be two useful units. And so it turns out that you can write most of your web pages based on these two units, which are called natively a div and a span. So if you ask me which one are the two fundamental presentation tags, these are the two. A div defines a rectangle, and a span defines a region of text. Okay. So for example, they typically go in one inside the other if you want. Okay. But you can create a div that says that contains. Let me just do it. In the div, there is a span that says I am happy. And then you can add another span that says, and I hope nothing breaks. Okay? And then below it, you can create another div. You don't always need a span in a div, but I can say simply, you know, have a nice day. Something like this. Okay? So if you render these, how will this render? Let's see if I really made it so that it can detect the changes. Otherwise, I don't want to get stuck in that. So yeah, it works actually. So you see, this is a div, and it was rendered as a single rectangle, and the two spans are one after the other, and have a nice day is another div. Let me actually magnify it a bit, okay? If you want to see the structure, you can always say inspect element. This is another quick way of opening the debugging windows. Okay, and so you see there is a div, and it tells you which span is which by highlight. Okay, so you can look at the elements in this way. Okay, and so if you have trouble because something is rendered funny, you can always look at you know, what was the definition in HTML and what's the corresponding rendering. Okay, now yes. Oh yes, this is the styling to which I come in a moment. This defines how the appearance is, and this is what I want to do next, in fact. Okay, so I think that these are the most important tags that I gave you, or at least the ones we will be using at the very beginning, except for an image tag that I'm gonna show you. Maybe in fact, let me show it to you now. How do you load images? Okay. So let me check in my code. before images. Okay, and let me merge the code from a point in which I had images. So for example, I had a beautiful cat. The cat is now in the news again. So class 2B. Okay, so I merged it. And now let's look at the code a moment. So now I have a directory images in which there are pictures of my favorite comic book cat, Chi. For those of you who know him, it's a character of Japanese comic books for cats. And if you have ever owned a cat, it's the comic book which most represents the view of the world from the eyes of a cat that I've ever read. So it's actually quite interesting. But this aside, you know, I'm a big fan of international comic books, I guess. But this thing aside, so these two live in the directory images, right? And so if I want to load them, for example, well, this is a complicated, you know, I'm just stealing code, but I'm gonna put it back into what we were doing. So imagine that I want to load the image of the cat. I put a div around it, but just because I like putting divs around everything. I will tell you later why, okay? But essentially, this is the line that loads my cat, okay? How does it look like? There is a class attribute, which I will explain in a second what it does. But aside from that, it says the source is images key0.jpg, okay? So this is great, but how does this images key0.jpg work? I actually had to define it in code, and I had to define this piece of code here. Sorry, this piece of code here, which is responsible for serving images. Let me show you. Let me comment in detail. So when you define a route or a get, no, you can optionally define parameters, just like function calls. So here the problem is that a request, let me write it as a comment, a request looks like images and then key0.jpg, okay? So the problem is that this key0.jpg is like the parameter to a function call. We need to extract it and use it somehow in our function, right? And so the way we do it is this. In the route definition or in the get definition, I can use these angle brackets. I can use it either to match a single variable as I'm doing here, or I can use them to match a pattern. This is a regular expression that says any character, but then the dot and then JPG. Okay, I'm matching a regular expression. You know about regular expressions, right? You should know. Okay, so anything that is like any character followed by .jpg, this is going to be matched, and the value will be assigned to the variable called file name. Okay, so when I define an endpoint, I can define essentially how to parse it into variables that are then passed to Python in bulk. Okay, and so what I say here is this: I define a function serve image that will reply with the image. And it works in this way. It returns a static file of file name. I give it the name of the root directory where the file names are, which is called images. And I say what the MIME type is. So let's go from backward to understand what these pieces are. MIME types is essentially the type of the file. The MIME types, I'm sure you have seen them, right? But it's an internet standard. The problem that it solves is the following. Everything, once it goes down a wire, is a bunch of bits, right? So suppose you ask me for something and yeah, I give you a bunch of bits. What are you supposed to do with it? Are you supposed to try to say, hey, can I decode it with JPEG? Hey, is it a PDF by any chance? Hey, is it a movie by any chance? I mean, it would be a mess, right? And so these responses, if you look at them, contain a MIME type, which normally is text/HTML for HTML, but in this case, I want the MIME type to be image/JPEG. This will tell the browser when it encounters that stream of bits that's an image encoded in JPEG, and if it wants to display it, it has to apply, the JPEG decoder to get back the image bitmap that it can place on the screen. Okay, so you can look at. I personally use Wikipedia as my resource for knowing the MIME types of everything. I'm sure there are other places as well, but that's as good as anything, right? Anyway, Mozilla Developer Network is again the place to look. So that is the MIME type. And so static file is a function, if you look at it, that I import. I didn't have to write it, luckily for me. We can look at the implementation, and actually maybe you should look at it. But for now, I tell you in words what it is doing, okay? It is taking that file and shipping it out to the browser alongside, no, it's doing something a little bit more intelligent. Assume that you, for example, you ask me for key.jpg. And then I tell you key.jpg, and it's 2:38 p.m. Now, the next time you ask me for, and you can cache it, I tell you. That is the important thing. This is an image, so I'm not, the HTML is given fresh every time. This is an image, so I can tell you, oh, this is key 0, it's 2:38 now, you can cache it up to maybe 24 hours. Next time you can you load the page, you will ask me, hey, I want to key 0 again. I have the 2:38 version. I check, it's 2:40, and then I tell you, you have it already, okay? Because I can tell you it hasn't changed. So this is a way to avoid loading things over and over again. And this is all taken care of by that static file function, if you look into it. Yes?
So on the side, it looks like there was only one image, in the regular expression matching, it looks like it should fit both key 0.jpg and
yes, these endpoints are used to serve any possible image. I don't want to write an endpoint for every image. I wrote an endpoint that can serve any JPEG file that I happen to throw in that direction. Yes, you're right. I mean, that's having one typically would do it because it would be boring, right? You have to write one endpoint per image. And so, in fact, I have a key 1 as well, and it would load that as well. Okay. Now, let me actually show you these caching at work. Okay. So now I added the cat. I hope so, at least. Yeah, this loads my beautiful cat. You should really read those comics. And if I go in the network tab, I can look at the request for key 0, okay? And this is interesting. So you can say, so let me do a shift reload. A shift reload is like, is a touchstone for, saying reload everything from scratch. So if I do a shift reload, this says, cache control, no cache. I'm not using any cache. I don't want to use any cached version because I click the shift reload. So this says, I'm not using any cache. I want everything fresh. Thank you. And the response says date, and then the content and the content type, which is the MIME type. Okay, fine, great. And so you see this response had a length of 71 kilobytes. Now, if I reload the page, thanks to that static file thing, you see the headers, the request contains, oops, this was served by, actually the browser itself decided that this was good enough. Okay, this is kind of funny. Okay. Why? Okay, this must be an optimization of this is bizarre, actually. Okay, let me see if Chrome works in the same way, actually. I'm curious now. So I reload these, and I get the cat. And then I do a simple reload. I look at the network tab. I have to click on all. Okay, I click on key 0. Hmm. Okay, from memory cache. Okay, this is also using memory cache. Slightly bizarre. Evidently, this browser decided that the image is requested too recently and it cannot possibly have changed. Ouch. Okay, so not a great example. Normally, you would see something different, okay? So we will see it in Web2Py more often, that behavior. What you normally see is that you get the normal protocol that I thought you would see is actually that you do the request and you get back a response that says 303 not changed. And so you know that you can use your cached version instead of having to download it again. But you at least check with the server whether there has been a change. In this case, I'm not fully understanding why it's not checking that there is no change, but I don't know how to explain it. It's an optimization that they must have introduced. Okay, so this is great, but these pages don't look particularly nice. So how do you style these pages? Okay, there are a couple of ways. So the most brutal one is this one. If you are here, you can write, for example, in this div have a nice name, you can say style is equal, style is one attribute, and you can say color red. Okay. So if you do this, which is not the recommended way, right? No, but don't worry, I just move this a bit, and then that goes away. No, I changed the color to red. So there are many of these attributes for changing. Now, this is not the recommended way. It was what was done at the beginning of the web, right? Things had the style attribute, and you could on the spot say how things look like. Then this was considered a bad idea, and the way of developing web pages moved to the following concept. Let's have the HTML describe the logical structure. Okay, these are the various pieces. And then let's use a separate set of instructions to define how to lay them out. Okay, and so the idea is this, that instead of saying div color is style color is equal to red, you can say which class things are. Imagine that class is a way of tagging things. So for example, class is equal to red div. Or I don't know, like alarm. And so, in that case, I caught fire. Okay? Well, sorry, something like this. And then you can have, a div like a class is equal to, I don't know, happy. Okay? So what do you do with these classes? You can write a separate file, a CSS file, okay? And you can include in a CSS file instructions for how to render things of a particular class. Okay? So, so let me do that. Okay, and in this directory, there's already some other CSS. Let me call this one welcome.css. Sorry, this is very basic, so I go slowly, but I also still. Okay. Stealing is better than retyping. So I'm building this. No, sorry, I did. I put it in the wrong place. I'm sorry. Let me do it again. So if I want to put stuff in I'm sorry, I messed up slightly. Okay. So, oh no, I'm sorry. Okay, now I copied. I have problems with cut and paste, the problems of computer science. So let me say, so here is how to include welcome.css. And this other style that is called stupid.css, we will see it in a moment. Okay, for the moment, I just want to, this is a way to comment out stuff in HTML. Okay, anything from this to that is commented out. So now I'm loading only welcome.css, and I want to define in welcome.css, oh no, sorry. I want to define here that, for example, anything of class alarm will be of color red and of background green, just to drive the color blind among you completely insane. Okay? And so let's see, first of all, whether it works, and then I answer your question, and then we comment. Okay? So let's see whether it works. Yes, it works. Okay? So it's horrible, I know. You had a question?
Wait, no.
Okay. Yeah. Perplexed. No. Okay. So, so what is this dot? Essentially, there is a way in CSS in which you can refer to various elements. So the full way to refer to a div of class alarm would be this. This would be, say, if a div of class alarm is found anywhere, apply this style to it. And there is color, background, there is also, for example, margin that tells you how much margin to leave around this particular div, and I can define it 10 points of margin around it. I can also define some padding for points. What is the difference between margin and padding? Imagine I'm defining a rectangle. The margin is outside of it, and the padding is inside of it before the content comes. Okay? I don't know if this explains it well, but I think if I load this page, I can show you. It's a useful distinction. Okay, so if I look at the elements, I can see, you see, this pink part here is the margin, right? It's around my div. The div is the border of the external border of the green space. The pink portion is the margin that is around it, and the padding is what is inside of it, so it's the thickness of the green line. And the content of the div itself is the blue region there. I'm sorry for the colorblind, because I recognize it's a bit of a mess, actually. But I hope that I explained it enough in words, okay? So there are many attributes, and this is one of the things that I do not fully explain in this class. There are many things you can change in CSS, and to tell you the truth, I know CSS in the way in which a completely uncultured savage learned it. I never studied it ever. And so basically the way I learned it is by searching my solution out of problems. So it may not be the best way, okay, but it's what I did. And so, you know, there are tags for color, background, margin, padding. There are for tags for font style, for the particular font, for the text size, for the width, for the height, for a gazillion things. Okay, and the best is to try to search the solution. I mean, the most obvious ones everybody knows, right? And you will know them as well. But there is a large amount of tags. Now, instead, let's look at this locator a moment. The locator works in this way. This applies to everything that is called, that is of class, a div of class alarm. If instead I say happy, because I also have something of class happy, this applies to anything of class happy. So it would apply also to a title that is of class happy. Okay? Essentially, if I omit something, it would apply to all, sorry, if I omit something, it would apply to everything of that class. Okay? Like I can say color, I don't know, I can say blue. Okay? And likewise, I could also say, I'm not sure it's a great idea, but these li, these would apply to every list element. Okay, that you have anywhere. And so I can say, for example, I'm sorry that I use color so much, but it's easy to see the effect, right? And I can say that the color is brown. Okay, so some colors you can define them in this way, and some colors you need to define them in the hexadecimal notation, you know, like 8888, 22, or whatever, no? And so it becomes this kind of lizard green. Let me go back to brown. So if I load the page now, okay, yeah, you see the effect I want. Now, imagine that, so I can also build the nested rules. For example, well, I don't have a super great example here, but imagine that, okay, let me make an example like this. You see, this is a list, and then I have a list like this. But here I say like a class is equal to big. Okay, big like a big text. Okay, I can say I can have nested rules that say something like this. If I am a li inside the UL of this class, then I want my text to be larger. Let's write this rule. So here I can say, no, I'm sorry, not here, but here I can say, if I am, you go from outside inside, right? So if I am a UL of class of class big text, and inside it I am an li element, okay, then I can say that the, that the text size, wait, font size is equal to 160%. Okay, so if I reload this page, okay, and you can see that here there are two rules that apply. So this is why the style attribute is interesting, okay? So if you have a piece of text there are two of these rules that apply. There is a rule that tells you that you should be brown, and there is another rule that says you should be as 160% the normal size. And so if you go here, you can see exactly in order from the most generic at the bottom to the most specific at the top, all the rules that have caused your text of your content to appear in a certain way rather than another. So you can see that there is an HTML styling, which is the default of the browser. Then there is, from UL big text, you inherit the following. That is yada, 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 that we don't care, that it comes standard with the browser. Then there are two rules that come from welcome.css. This is what we did, okay? And the two rules say that a list item is brown, and a UL big text containing a list item has this font size. And if you can also check and uncheck these, okay, to experiment with what would happen if you commented out or kept that particular styling. And you can also highlight some stuff and try to give it a particular style attribute. Actually, I think you need to highlight here, not there, okay? But for example, I can give it a style attribute of font family, like sans serif, okay? And you see that font family changed and is now without serif. The serifs are these little, you know, I have to say, protrusions of letters, right? Like the T, the end of the stems of the letters. Okay, so you see, I can experiment with it in here. So one thing that you can do is that you can play with it here. For example, this is too small still. I want 180, no? And you can change it, and you can play with it. The only thing you have to remember is that the changes that you do there are not written back to the server, right? This is just your copy in the browser of the page you fetched. So that if you love having 180, then you need to go back here and write a 180 here. So that next time you download the page, it will be also 180. Because when you reload this page, you know, my playing around with the serif will be lost. But now the font size difference is 180, and I cannot see it. But I'm told it's 180. Okay? So, so this is how to attach a style sheet to a HTML in the small. And so this way of selecting elements is a fairly general way that we will see often in our work. Okay? Let's look at how I included this style sheet in detail one moment, because I think I went a bit fast. The instruction to include it, I put it in the head tag. Head is a place at the beginning of every page where we can put stuff that is generically useful to process the entire page. If you go on New York Times or any other newspaper, you find that the head tag contains a bunch of stuff. It contains, for example, which icon, which image should you use if your article is quoted in social media, which should be the title if you share your article via Twitter, there is a bunch of very interesting stuff to look at. Here, for us, we will often load the CSS files that we need. So you see, the format for linking it is, I say that this is a link, the type is text CSS, the relation to the page is that it's a style sheet for the page, and the place where to get it is called CSS welcome.css. And now you will tell me, hey, how comes you can serve CSS stuff without any other precaution? And I tell you, no, I can't. So I had to have, similarly to my images, a controller events for serving the CSS. Okay, works in the same way. It's again one of these things that use a static file to give you back the file. Okay, so there is no magic. You know, I can serve you JPEGs, CSS. I can serve you everything I want. I have to define how to serve it in bulk. Okay. Now we have the last 5 minutes, and I think we don't want to use them. No. I mean, what I want to explain to you is how to use the stupid.css. But it probably doesn't fit in 5 minutes. So I think we can use it to begin next time. Essentially, people hate that I use in the class stupid.css. Let me tell you briefly what it is. It's a framework to help you paginate a page and, for example, divide the text in columns. So the reason I use it in class is because it's very simple. No, quiet. Is there any question at this point on anything before we close the class? No question? Okay, then we can. I think we can finish.